There's a moment many successful people eventually reach when the role that built their success no longer feels like who they really are. From the outside, everything still looks successful. So why does the work that once felt energizing suddenly start feeling off? Why do conversations that used to feel natural start sounding rehearsed? And why does it feel like you're standing between two versions of yourself without being able to fully step into either one? In today's episode, I'm going to introduce a stage I call Identity Eclipse. And if you're in it, there is a good chance nothing is wrong. Something new is beginning. Welcome back to your Passion, Purpose, and Personal Brand. I'm Lisa McGuire, Strategic Identity Advisor and creator of the category of Only process, where I guide experienced professionals to recognize the authority they've built over a lifetime and turn it into the next chapter of their career or business. This episode is part 3 of the Identity Evolution series. You can go back to the past 2 episodes to catch parts 1 and 2. In the last episode, we talked about a stage that many experience I call successfully stuck. Successfully stuck is the moment when the life that worked no longer feels completely true. Today, we're going to explore what often comes next, because once someone recognizes they're successfully stuck, another phase begins. It's a phase that can feel confusing and sometimes even unsettling. This is what I call identity eclipse. Let's look at what that really means. An eclipse happens when two forces overlap. For a moment, the light we normally rely on disappears. The sun is still there, but something has moved into alignment that temporarily blocks clarity. Identity evolution works in a similar way. Identity eclipse is the phase where two identities begin overlapping. You have the identity that built your success and the identity that's beginning to emerge. Both are present at the same time, which means neither one feels completely clear. You might recognize this phase if you can still do your work well, but you don't feel connected to it in the same way. You find yourself less comfortable and interested in conversations that used to matter. You start questioning things that once felt obvious. You feel pulled towards something different, but you can't fully articulate what it is. You hesitate when someone asks what you do, not because you don't have an answer, but because it no longer feels complete. Or maybe it feels like this. You're not lost, but you're not clear either. You're not stuck, but you're not moving the same way. That's identity eclipse. But before we go further, I want to pause for a moment and share something with you. This episode is sponsored by a methodology I created called Category of Only. Many of the leaders and experienced professionals I work with arrive in my world during this identity eclipse. From the outside, everything still looks successful, but internally, something has shifted. That identity that once defined their value no longer feels like the identity meant to lead their next chapter. Category of Only is the process I use to help people recognize the authority their life has been building and translate that authority into a clear direction for what comes next. We'll come back to that later. But first, I want to talk about why identity eclipse happens in the first place. Let's look at why success suddenly stops feeling aligned. Most successful professionals build their identity through performance. They learn what success looks like. They learn what gets rewarded. They learn how to meet expectations and deliver results. And if you're good at that game, you can build an incredible life, a strong career, a reputation, influence. But identity isn't static. As you gain experience, perspective, and insight, something begins to change. Your thinking deepens, your priorities shift. You start noticing patterns that other people miss. And eventually, the identity that once defined you begins to feel incomplete. Not wrong, just incomplete. This phase feels disorienting. During identity eclipse, something unusual happens. The identity that built your success is still operating. You can still do the job. You still understand the system. You're still capable of performing at a high level, but another identity is beginning to emerge, one that cares less about performing the role and more about expressing truth, perspective, and authority. And when those two identities overlap, clarity temporarily disappears. It was only a few weeks ago that I was speaking with a leader who said something that perfectly captured this phase. They said, I can still do everything I've always done, but I don't feel like that's who I am anymore. They hadn't lost their capability. They hadn't lost their clarity. They had outgrown the identity that once defined them. And what they weren't feeling wasn't confusion, it was transition. This is the part most people misunderstand. They assume something is wrong. They think they've lost direction or that they need to figure things out faster. But what's actually happening is something very different. You're not losing clarity. You're outgrowing the identity that used to create it. And just like the solar eclipse, this phase is temporary. You reach a point when the light returns, but it returns from a different place. Take a moment and ask yourself this question. Where in your life do you feel pulled between two identities? The one you've always been known for and the one that feels like it's beginning to emerge. Maybe it shows up in your work. Maybe it appears in the conversations that now interest you. Maybe it's simply feeling that something new is trying to take shape. Just notice where that tension exists, because that tension is not a problem. It is a signal. If this resonates with you, there is a good chance you may be standing in the middle of an important transition. The identity that built your success has done its job. Now, the deeper question becomes, what identity is meant to lead your next chapter? That's the work I help leaders and experienced professionals explore through the category of only. If you're curious about how your experience and perspective could translate into the next chapter of your work, you can reach out for a connection. Now, a preview for next time. We're going to talk about something I call reinvention ridge. It's the moment just before a new landscape appears, the point where someone realizes they can't keep performing the old role in the same way anymore. It's a threshold moment, and understanding it can completely change how you approach what comes next. But before we wrap today, I have a favor to ask. If you are enjoying the show and watching on YouTube, please subscribe by pushing that button below this video. And if you're listening on Apple or Spotify, I'd love if you subscribe and leave a review. It's how others can find the show. So until next time, stay curious about who you're becoming, while still thanking the person you've always been that got you to where you are today. Thanks for being with me today. I'll see you here next time.